I'd like to call this meeting of your Newark City Council to order. Jennifer, please call the roll.
Mr. Bug?
Here.
Mr. Cost?
Here.
Mrs. Floyd? Mr. Frazier?
Here.
Ms. Hall? Here. Mr. Johnson?
Here.
Mr. Marmee?
Present.
Mr. Rath?
Here.
Mr. Roletta?
Here.
Mr. Blake?
Here. We have 9 present this evening. Thank you, Jennifer. We're off to a good start.
Yeah.
Would you please stand, Mr. Johnson? I'd like to do the invocation.
Let us pray. Lord, as we enter into February, we're thankful for your presence with us. Be with us in our deliberations. Again, be with those in need, those in joy. Be with our member Carol Floyd in her recovery. As the election year comes to us, guide us, our leaders in the nation, the state, and the city. We're thankful we have the opportunity and freedom to select our leaders. Be with us all, and may we know your will, we pray in your name. Amen.
Amen. William, you want to help me with the pledge?
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you, William, and thank you, Mr. Johnson. Next on the agenda this evening, we have caucus. That's the time for council to discuss anything that they may have pertinent to the agenda this evening. Do we have anything? Mr. Marmee?
I'd like to make a motion to excuse Councilperson Floyd.
Motion by Mr. Marmee. Second by Mr. Johnson.
Mr. President,
Mr. Cost.
I was asked by Mrs. Floyd to let you all know that her knee replacement was successful. She's home and she's up and about and doing well.
Great, thank you, Mr. Cost. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes, thank you. Do we have anything else for caucus this evening? Okay, moving on. The minutes of our January 19th, 2016 meeting. Do we have a motion to approve those?
Motion.
Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Johnson. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, same sign. That passes, thank you. We have 4 reports this evening from standing committees. We have one from Finance, one from Service, one from Safety, and one from Capital Improvements. Without objection, those will be received and filed. We have 1 report this evening from city officials, from Barb Jobs, our city tax administrator, the income tax revenue reports for the period ending January 15th, 2016. Also, without objection, that will be received and filed. We have no communications this evening. And next, we have comments from citizens. There are 2 places for comments from citizens. One's now and one's after the legislation. Again, this is not a debate with council. This is just your opportunity to make a comment. If you please just raise your hand so I can have you come forward and give us your name and address for the record. I'd appreciate it.
I'm Wayne Butcher, 263 Union Street. I'd like to know when the servicing of the Union Street is going to get just started. I'm just a little bit anxious, but I could wait. And in regard to the alleys, I could because those alleys could wait. And I'd like to see the Print Festival come on back during the spring, especially some months when it's hot and humid. I really enjoyed it. I do remember a long time ago that they had down here on the square, and they had all kinds of music, history lesson, they talked about history, about the city of Newark, or derived from how it developed. I'd like to see you bring that back. That I pass.
Thank you, Wayne. Do we have anyone else for this first section of citizens' comments? David?
David Green, 1791 Olympic Court, Newark. Wanted to say something about concern that I'm sure you all share about the 2 Habitat homes that burned just recently. And at the same time, the East Side Fire Station is not open. It's closed. My concern is that we have a very good fire department, and we have a very skillful and highly committed full-time staff. And I think very quickly sometimes people jump to the conclusions that you can have part-time replacements for full-time workers and it will be just the same as it was. and too many reassurances about this don't satisfy me. The Licking County Retired Teachers, which I'm a member of the association, this afternoon voted to give $1,000 to help out the 2 families that were affected by the habitat fires. And of course these homes are homes of low-income people, which often have the most likelihood of electrical or other problems, whatever the problems were. I think they're being investigated. I've been a teacher for a lot of years, and it's been very clear to me that part-time teachers do not replace full-time teachers. And I think we could say real quickly, well, firefighters and teachers or educators are different entities, and they are. But I think the truth and common sense and facts from around the country very clearly illustrates that when you change from full-time to part-time workers, that you reduce the quality, the commitment, the longevity, the benefits, the likelihood that people will stay on the job. It's not to say anything critical about the devotion of individual people who do that. It's to say that the process of moving from full-time to part-time is one that affects services. I live, as you know, off of Londondale on Olympic Court, and a number of council people live there in regions around there, areas around there as well. I'm concerned as a resident, and I would bet money that with a good conversation or any conversation in that part of Newark and other parts of Newark, that people will talk about why not have full-time staff. I think it's important to kind of hold on to that, and I won't be assured by your saying it will be the same. So when I'm really not asking for a response anyway, I'm asking to say, think twice about any kind of move toward part-time firefighting staff. Think a lot more about ways that it's possible to get resources so that we don't have to do that, including, a levy, which was mentioned by the mayor in the paper, including all kinds of other possibilities that need to be explored, including involving the communities and the residents in this problem directly. So I would argue very strongly that we should not move from full-time to part-time firefighters.
Thank you, Mr. Gray. Anyone else for this first section? Okay, we'll move on to resolutions on the second reading. 16-06. Jennifer?
Resolution 16-06 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, Mr. Rath, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
You've heard the second reading of 16-06. What is your wish?
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee?
make a motion to adopt resolution 16-06.
Second. Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mr. Bubb. Is there any discussion on 16-06? Seeing none, Jennifer, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Bubb?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd? Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
yes,
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
1606 passes 9-0. Next, we have resolutions on the first reading, 16-08.
Resolution 16-08 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the city of Newark to submit an application to the Ohio Department of Public Safety for an award of fiscal year 2016-2017 funding under the Ohio EMS Training and Equipment Grant Program.
16-08 will be held for a second reading for 2 weeks. Next, we have 16-09.
Resolution 16-09 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
16-
Mr. President,
Mr. Marmee.
make a motion to waive the 2-day reading rule on resolution 16-09.
Motion by Mr. Marmee to waive the 2-day reading rule, second by Mr. Bubb. Mr. Marmee.
This needs to be expedited in order to get these vehicles taken care of.
Thank you, Mr. Marmee. Jennifer, please call the roll to waive the 2-day reading rule.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd? Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
2-day reading rule has been waived. Mr. Marmee.
Make a motion to adopt Resolution 16-09.
Second.
Motion by Mr. Marmee, second by Mr. Cost. Is there any other discussion on 16-09? Seeing none, Jennifer, please call the roll to vote.
Mr. Bub?
Yes.
Mr. Cost?
Yes.
Mrs. Floyd? Mr. Frazier?
Yes.
Ms. Hall?
Yes.
Mr. Johnson?
Yes.
Mr. Marmee?
Yes.
Mr. Rath?
Yes.
Mr. Roletta?
Yes.
Mr. Blake?
Yes.
16-09 passes 9-0. Next, we have 16-10.
Resolution 16-10 by Mr. Cost, Mr. Marmee, a resolution authorizing and directing the Director of Public Service of the City of Newark, Ohio, to apply for, accept, and enter into a supplemental water pollution control loan fund agreement on behalf of the City of Newark for planning, design, and/or construction of wastewater facilities, downtown sewer separation, and designating a dedicated repayment source for the loan.
16-10 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. Next on the first reading, we have 16-11.
Resolution 16-11 by Mr. Marmee, Mr. Cost, a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor of the City of Newark to prepare and submit an application to the Ohio Development Services Agency for a Community Housing Improvement Grant Award for federal fiscal year 2016.
16-11 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. And finally, tonight, we have 16-12.
Resolution 16-12 by Mr. Cost, a resolution appropriating monies for current expenses of the municipal corporation.
And 16-12 will be held for 2 weeks for a second reading. And that concludes our legislation this evening. Thank you. Next on the agenda is our second opportunity for comments from citizens. Do we have anybody?
Darren Decker, 188 Alcon Drive. I recently sent an email to our first ward council person. There's a sign at the top of Alcon Drive indicating that it's been zoned for multifamily dwelling. And I was just questioning, because I went through the service agenda and notes, when that was changed or if that was originally zoned for multifamily dwelling. And if so, what the dates were, so I could look into that. The city put a new housing addition, or started a new housing addition in Jones Meadow to develop this, that area a little bit, and to change that zoning to multifamily dwelling, what I think would take away from what has been started there at the very end of Garfield Avenue. Additionally, I don't think the sign, if the Shea sign has been permitted, meets the requirements of the permit. And I would like some direction to check into that also. Secondly, to reiterate what was said earlier about part-time firefighters, we've stood up here before and talked about this and the low staffing of the fire department. I think on the day of the fire where the 2 houses burned, the station at the east end of Newark was put out of service. I think the city needs to continue to seek funds. It bothers me as a firefighter and as a citizen to see that there's maybe some interest in an additional levy. I can't help but think the fact that we go before the citizens seeking a levy in the name of public safety, but we're scraping it off the backs of them to supplement other incomes in the city of Newark. And I know that there has been some questions raised about that with the original levy that was supposed to increase manning. But I would like to see the city to seek additional sources of income, whether it be a safer grant or maybe a permanent income tax or something like that. But to go for a grant in the name of public safety a second time around and still not be able to see anything result from the original, I think is a slap in the face of the citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. If you could stick around a minute, I'd like to get a few details after the meeting. Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Mr. Crawford.
Daniel Crawford, 163 South 2nd Street. I didn't come with anything prepared, so you can rest assured that this won't be too long. Just come up, first of all, to reiterate everything that David Green and the gentleman who just spoke said pertaining to part-time firefighters. We all know where I stood about this last year, and you'll see a letter to the editor of mine before too long about that as well. The other thing I wanted to talk about, just very briefly, was last year I brought it up around this time, and I'll do it again this year. This time of year is obviously, pretty cold at times. Right now we're kind of dealing with kind of a mild winter, thankfully, but I can't help but always think about those who don't have a home. Me, I'm not that far away from, at any moment not having a home myself. As a matter of fact, if it wasn't for Section 8 housing and some other help from the government, I would be homeless right now and probably wouldn't have my children as a result. So, I pay special attention to what happens to people who are homeless, because that could very well be me one day. I hope it never happens. It could be any person in this room for, a certain, twist of fate. Recently, I was driving away from Giant Eagle. Obviously, most of you know by now that's where I work, and there's usually a gentleman who's standing out at the corner there holding a sign saying, "We'll work for food," or "We'll," asking for some kind of help. And my son was in the back seat, and he looked at the guy with the sign. He asked, "Daddy, why is he holding a sign saying, 'We'll work for food'?" Now, he's 9 years old, and I had to explain to him because he doesn't have a home. And that's a lot to explain to a child. I mean, fortunately, and I hope he never experiences it, he doesn't know what it's like to be homeless. And this time of year, it pains me to see that we don't do anywhere near enough as a society for the homeless. I mean, it's a shame already that we have homeless veterans. I think that's a crime against humanity in and of itself. But in a society that is the wealthiest country in the world, for us to have any homeless, I think we have a lot to explain for ourselves in that case. And when you have homeless shelters that, say that, they don't have enough resources to house everyone who needs a home, and that's a shame. And I know we don't have limitless resources, but there's got to be something that we can do more, even if it's allowing people to have, some temporary structure they can put up for themselves, like a tent city or something. And I've seen some really horrible reports recently in other parts of the country where the cities will actually force, the destruction of a tent city. And there was a recent one, I think it was down in West Virginia, where the administration down there the local administration had ordered the destruction of a tent city shortly before the blizzard that was coming up. I think that if it was the mayor's order itself, should face possible prosecution if anyone died from that. So I'm just saying, as a species, just in the interest of humanity, we just need to consider doing more for the least fortunate in our society. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Crawford. Anyone else?
I gotta get my 2 cents. Tim Walden, 167 South 2nd Street. I remember a time up here that we would think about getting rid of the police station, the fire station. The police. We were gonna go all county sheriffs. But for one vote, I remember one vote back in the 80s came that we almost didn't have a police department. One vote up here. And people started wondering why we going to the police department. My father was a police officer. And I'm living in the south end of Newark now because he wasn't allowed to live outside the city limits. Now, they can live in the county next door to us, but you have to realize something. That could be living in the other side, Columbus, Zanesville, Mount Melon, Lancaster. That's a long way. Just up until the time we got the charter switch over, we had firefighters who were living in Portsmouth and in Ross County and Hamilton County. We're driving up here every day or every other day and living up here. And that's maybe one reason why we might not have a situation. But now, getting back to what I wanted to say, the mayor, 2 weeks ago, the mayor came up here and sat there in the president's place and said, made this city look like RFD, Mayberry RFD, back in the 50s. We got good neighborhood, we got good police department, we got good fire, schools and stuff. Okay, let's go down the list. Fire. Okay, he said we got 3 new firefighters. And then 2 days later, we hear in the paper or saw on the computer that we're going to shut down the East End Fire Station for lack of manpower. Man, if I was a mayor, I wouldn't shut down the East End. I shut down the West End Fire Station. The fire station out West End is close to the hospital. People out the West End got urgent care, they got the hospital, and they got about 80% of the medical staff out there in that West End. Poor people on the East End, what they got down the East End? A fire station that is closed. So the other night, we needed down the East End because one of the fire trucks was out of the unit. And they had to come all the way from North End or East End, go down there. If I was the mayor, I would shut down the West End station, not the East End. That is telling half the city of people of the East End that live in the East End that our mayor and our city council don't give a darn about the people in the East End or the South End or North East. Because they shut down a fire station. The fire station out the West End is within 5 minutes of the hospital. They got medical care out there. They don't out there. 2, police department. He said we got good staff. Oh, the police. Okay, we got good staff. But have you ever drove around this city at nighttime, in the daytime, and see drug dealers on street corners? Drive down some of these alleys, down the South End and out East End and West End. The alleys, they got drive-through drug dealers. You stop here, oh no, his guy selling crack. You got to go down the next one if you want heroin. You got to go down the line. And that's the way it is down there between Heritage Street and National Drive in those 2 alleys. My street, I got 2 people on my street that stand out in the middle of the street. Well, cops going back and forth, selling drugs. And that's our police department. What was neighborhood? Another thing, have you drove around our neighborhood? We got people, like he cut about homeless people, we got people down in the South End living in house trailers. It's running off of generators. We got a person down East Main Street that is living in vacant houses. Because they're all happy. They got a whole family down there living in vacant houses. 2 kids, a mother and father. They go to school every day. But now we want to tear these houses down. Let's fix these vacant houses up and give to you people like Habitat Home Maine. Now I have to build one. Let's see, what was the next one? Schools. Our schools. Have anybody seen a report card of our schools? It's the lowest of the county. D's and E's. D's and C's. Of course, that's what I got in school, D's and C's. But back then, I didn't care. But now, you guys think computers and stuff? All they do now is just show the computer, hey, here's homework. Go home, do it on the computer. Okay, bye. Teachers don't care. Nowadays. I drove school bus. I know what the teachers used to do. Give the kids homework, go home. And what was the 5th one? Property maintenance code. Property maintenance code. I can stand here for an hour for that. We just got this new garbage thing about 3 years ago. 2 years ago? Have anybody drove around and see the garbage in the neighborhoods? Not down the South End, East End, the West End, the North End. Trash cans out, dogs in the car, houses falling down. But I would rather have a house in my neighborhood that is falling down, that would bring my property value down to 0, instead of seeing a vacant lot down there. But in the south end, there's a lot of them down there now. Nobody's allowed to build down there because we're in the flood zone. But the city, I talk to a lot of people. And somebody on the city council know some of the places I go to. I talk to them at nighttime. I spent 2.5 hours the other day talking to people out in the shopping center. I talked to one person, come up, talk about this, the State of the Union, and we started talking. People come up and talk to me out there in Heath. It's in Heath, because we don't got no place to say Newark to go shop except Little Bear, and they don't got half the stuff. But I talk to people in the city, and they say, you guys are not spending the money that we got, our taxes, wisely. You guys are not giving the people that need the money to run the city wisely. You guys putting all the money downtown. All the money is going downtown. And now I'm hearing rumors from people down in the downtown of building this stuff downtown that they are not getting paid. The workers are not getting paid from the organization that's supposed to be in partnership with the city of Newark. Is the city going to get stuck with building that so-called outside, or what do you call that place down there between Market Street, on Market Street? Or are we going to get stuck building that too? That fancy little alley, got bricks and stuff going down through it? Or are we going to get stuck paying for that? We got stuck on that museum down there. We got stuck on other things down there from that organization. And you don't believe me? Go back in history. $300,000 that have not been paid back to them from the state, county, and state. Are we going to get stuck? Are we going to get stuck with all these new people that build these new or lot on top? Tax breaks. Give the tax breaks to people that need it, not the people that can afford it. These guys are multi-millionaires. And you guys will give them $50,000, $58,000 tax breaks. Now you guys want to give tax breaks to a guy downtown to do on top of what H.H. Gregg or the jewelry store. And you guys want to give a tax break to the guy who want to do an old school. Let's open that old school back up and give it to the people that need it, the homeless, instead of trying to build it into the rich people. Start going out and start talking to the people. Not the little group of church group you guys go to. Not the little group of like Democrat Party. Okay, I'm there 5 minutes. And stuff. And start going out to the people. And start driving around the city at nighttime. And see what the city going to do. Or not, come out with me. I'll show you where all these things are. I'll show you the drug dealers. I'd let you talk to the hookers. And the pimps. And the crack H's. W's, I'm sorry. And I'll let you see what's going on in this city. I'm sorry I took too much time. I could stand here for hours. The only person in this room that can actually say he doesn't know what's going on is Mark. And I don't know how he is yet. I haven't did a background check on you, so thank you.
Anyone else? Anyone from administration? Mr. Motter.
Just a couple of brief comments on the Habitat homes. Number one, I want to let council know that one of our funding sources in the Department of Development is our home revolving loan fund. That's where we've done some past programs to improve houses and so forth. Put a loan out there, and when they pay back, we put those back into a revolving loan fund. We contribute to these Habitat homes about 20% of their budget. So it hits home here quite a bit, I think, for the city of Newark. This is really quite a loss. It's very sad what happened to these families. They work so hard. They each have to put 200 hours of community service into that home. They work alongside of everybody else that shows up to build the homes, all the other volunteers. Mark Fiore, who's the lead carpenter and foreman for Habitat. So I just want to let council know that we do have City of Newark funds going into those projects. We'll continue to have funds going into those projects in future years. And I hope they can regroup and families can regroup from this terrible tragedy. Thank you.
Mr. Marmy had a very good question. These houses are insured, correct?
Yes, they are.
Okay.
Yes.
I'm glad to hear that. Thank you. Anyone else? Award-winning auditor, Mr. Johnson. All pass. Mr. Johnson. Honorable Law Director Saxon.
Thank you, Mr. President. I guess I just can't help myself. I'd like to thank Mr. Decker and Mr. Green and Mr. Crawford for making some positive statements, contributing to the dialogue of some difficult issues this council has to address. But I'm convinced that Mr. Waldron and I must live in different cities. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Sassen. Mayor Hall.
I will pass, thank you.
Mr. Bell.
I'll pass, thank you.
Mr. Cost.
I will also pass. Thank you.
Mr. Frazier.
I assume that the comment that I don't know what I'm doing was supposed to be a compliment. The current situation we find ourselves in is 76 firefighters, an $8 million budget, and staffing concerns. And there's no talk, no legislation of going from full-time firefighters to part-time firefighters. But we understand the concern and we appreciate your opinion. The city finds itself in some financial concerns, and the hope is to find a long-term solution to a problem. And it's easy to look at raising taxes for systematic and concerns that are systemic and long-term. And so the hope is to find a solution that benefits the people of Newark for the long term, so we don't have to revisit these issues over and over again. As far as the Habitat for Humanity homes are concerned, that it is a great example of what our community does with Habitat for Humanity, of housing people and partnering with local organizations in order to make a difference in our community. That with the Salvation Army and St. Vincent de Paul and a plethora of churches and nonprofit organizations that give to those that are in need. And to say that our community does not care about the impoverished or those that are less fortunate is not true. And in my faith and in my walk, I am here to make a difference and to do what's best for the people of Newark and what's best for our community, and all the people here, I believe, have the same calling. And I hope that in the coming years we can continue to make progress and revitalize our city and improve the lives of everybody in our community. We're not here to work for the rich and the affluent. We're here to work for the people. And that's what is the message, and that's what we need to do. And I thank you guys for your comments, and I hope that you will continue to remain vocal and active. But please remember that our community is in the right direction, and we continue to make a difference and see progress every day. And I look forward to the next 4 years to see where we stand after my term in office. With that, I'll pass.
Thank you, Mr. Frazier. Ms. Hall.
Thank you, I'll pass.
Mr. Johnson.
I'll pass.
Mr. Marmon.
I need to call a finance committee meeting, and with that, I'll pass.
Mr. Rath.
I want to call a service committee meeting, and for somebody that doesn't know what he's doing, Mr. Frazier, that was very well put, so I'll just say ditto and pass.
Thank you, Mr. Rath. Mr. Levin.
Thanks, Mr. President, I'll pass.
And Mr. Blake.
Thank you, Mr. President. It's been asked of me a few different meetings now to Mr. Butcher is asking about the Flint Festival. I quickly did a Google search, Mr. Butcher, and Flint Ridge, which is one of our places of pride here in our county, they have a Flint Ridge Nap-In on May 22nd through the 24th, the holiday weekend. So I'll print this out and bring it to you, but it's the dates it's not on the square like you want. I know it's not on the square like you want, but there is a Flint Festival, so we'll make sure that I get you the right information for that. Okay, all right, and hopefully we could get you maybe a ride or someone can get you out there to do that. So every time you talk, we're not ignoring you. I hear you. So.
I still won't traffic light or something.
Okay, well, I'll leave that to the mayor. So I can't do nothing about that. So I thought there was a lot of good comments here tonight related to safety services, related to the people that are less fortunate than ourselves. And tomorrow, we actually have a very strong advocate who brings advocacy to issues of drug addiction and issues of prison reform, and just bring some awareness to those issues. Her name is Piper Kerman. She wrote a memoir, a book called The Orange is the New Black. There's a popular Netflix TV show based off of her memoir. She's going to be at the Sparta restaurant at noon, and so anyone who wants to come and hear her talk about these issues. And then later that evening at Swayze Chapel at Denison at 7 o'clock, she's going to give a convocation. But she brings about many of the comments that were said here today, this evening, talking about needing to, is drug addiction and the issues related around that a police issue? Should they be treated as criminals or should they be treated as patients? I mean, these people usually have some type of mental health or other issues related in their lives, so we need to recognize these issues and deal with them appropriately in bringing nonprofit organizations together and collaborating and partnering with things. Not a single agency is going to be able to deal with these types of issues, and so a lot of her work and her testimony before Congress and other state legislatures is very, very revealing. So if you have time during the lunch hour tomorrow, I encourage you to go to the Sparta to hear her speak, or come up to Denison at 7 o'clock tomorrow night to hear her speak. And if you haven't read the memoir, the book is very different than the TV show. The TV show obviously is for entertainment purposes and whatnot, and it alludes to the book. But if you get a chance to read the book, I would encourage that. With that, I'll pass, Mr. President.
Thank you, Mr. Blake. Mr. Rowland, thank you for your comments. I personally have several issues with some of the things you said. And I'm not going to go down the list, but I'm just not sure you have facts to back any of that up. So I'm just going to leave it at that. Our next committee meeting is February 8th at 5:30 here at this room. Next council will be actually Tuesday the 16th. Monday is a holiday. 7 o'clock also at this room. Is there a motion to adjourn? Motion by Mr. Rath, second by Mr. Frazier. All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We're adjourned.